Not Only Playbook fans, we are back. Week 12 is officially over. Man, playoffs, no playoffs. I think if you, at this point, you either know or you don't know, right? So I think it's the harsh reality that you kind of have to face. I think there's 2 weeks left in most fantasy football leagues before playoffs kick off. I am Sweetcar. I got Shobit with me. Shobit, 2 weeks till playoffs, man. It's been a long time since you've been on the pod. Welcome back.
Yeah, it feels good to be back, man. But yeah, you're right, man. It's that time of the year where you're like, either you make it, you don't. I have like a slim hope, and I wish that JJ wasn't on bye week, but
Dude.
there's still a chance. It's not over. 2 leagues, one of the leagues I'm looking pretty good. The league that we're in, it's not looking so good. But man, I'm hoping, I'm praying.
Yeah, dude, the JJ news is unfortunate. The fact that they activated him immediately today and said he's probably going to play after the bye means that if yesterday's game was so important that it was like the game that helped decide if they were going to make the playoffs or not, I think he would have played. So it's unfortunate to see that he's not going to play. And now that's what, like 8 weeks maybe that you've missed with Justin Jefferson. Like that's a lot. That's
a
half of the actual regular season, and that's so much of the fantasy season. So it's unfortunate. All you can hope is that when he comes back for like the last 2 weeks or the last week, if you're in the playoffs, that he just goes back to old JJ, because then that would make it that much sweeter. But injuries have been awful this year, man. I'm trying to remember a year where I felt like injuries have been as bad as this. And it's not like my team is completely decimated. I've had injuries, but it's just every week you're looking around the league and it's just like big time players just going down, right? Not even just like randos, but like big time players, quarterbacks left and right. So it has definitely been that kind of year. And if you've avoided the injury bug, then like what's funny is in our league, Shishot has avoided the injury bug and he's number one. In my other league, Jake has avoided the injury bug and he's number one. The common denominator, they both have Tyreek Hill on their team. So I don't know if it's the Tyreek Hill and the lack of injuries, but yeah, I mean, but the coincidence is there. But dude, it's been crazy. So we'll definitely break all of it down. Do you have any thoughts before we get into all the action?
No, I mean, hey, they have a solid team. Shishot's got a solid team, so I won't take that away from him. But it's definitely nicer when your players don't it's like concussions or hamstring injuries, right? And it's been a lot. You're right. But let's dive in this. I'm ready to do this.
Let's do it. Let's kick things off. It was just Thanksgiving weekend, so we had a lot of football before Sunday. Let's kick it off with the rundown. Thursday night football, Thanksgiving triple header. The Packers and the Lions first game on the board. Packers upset the Lions in Detroit 29-22. Cover the 8.5-point dog spread over 47.5 cashes. I am on this teeter-totter roller coaster, as is the rest of the world, as are Packers fans probably, about Jordan Love. Like, what did you see from him this game? And what can we take away from this game?
Dude, Jordan Love had a great game, right? 3 touchdowns, 268 yards, going into Detroit and beating the Detroit Lions. He had a solid game. And I think that if you have a roster spot, you should definitely consider picking him up, right? They face the Chargers and the Lions after the Chiefs game next week. So maybe you don't start him against the Chiefs. They have a pretty good defense, but the week following, you can definitely deploy Jordan Love in hopes that he'll have a similar game as he did it against the Lions this week. Another guy that's been really good is Jaden Reed for the Packers. I think that's like 3 games in a row now, touchdowns. Either it's a rushing touchdown or it's a passing touchdown, right? So he's been a bright spot with double-digit points in the last 3 of his games, 7 targets last week, and 2 rushing attempts. So you're seeing the kind of Aaron Jones kind of falling off, and so
he's hurt. He's being hurt, right? Dylan sucking, and more running for Reed.
Right. So that's more opportunities for Reed. And another guy, right? And I think you'll highlight him as well. But Christian Watson has been doing, he's seeing touchdown, which is great. He's seeing more snaps as well. So you like that from the wide receiver one. And so a lot of good things going the Packers' way. And also not to take away from their defense as well. Packers defense, who had a solid game last week, 15 points on Sleeper. But like I said, outside of the Chiefs matchup next week, they face the Giants, the Buccaneers, the Panthers, Minnesota, and Chicago. So if you have a bench spot to roster a defense to get ready for the playoffs, I think the Packers defense is a good team to go after and put on your bench.
Yeah, I feel like we rode this roller coaster with the Packers where there was a point in the season where we're like, is there a single Packer that you would consider starting in fantasy? Probably not. And now we're kind of all the way back. Jordan Love has been pretty good. AJ Dillon's kind of the only running back. So out of necessity, you're probably starting him if you're a Dillon owner. And like you said, Jaden Reed's fantastic. I think he is the most electric receiver on their offense. He's the one that jumps out the most. He's the one that they use the most in different ways. They design plays and, draw things up for him specifically. So you love to see that. I did want to talk about Watson. It's back-to-back weeks with the touchdown. I mean, is this the random touchdown streak, kind of like what he had last year with the Rodgers? If so, I mean, a hot streak could be, coming for Watson specifically because of the schedule that you mentioned, right? You have the Giants, you have Tampa Bay, you have Carolina, you have Minnesota. Outside of that, you have Kansas City. So it's one bad matchup, but then the rest are all middling teams that you can throw the football against. So really good matchup for those players. Watson's a free agent in my other league.
Right.
I had picked him up in our league and dropped him again. So he's definitely out there because the consistency has not been there. But these are the kind of guys, man, you're going into the playoffs. Who are you going to want to throw in your flex, especially in a 12-team league? It's not like, we have stacked rosters where we already know what the lineup's going to look like. Sometimes it's going to take picking up one of these guys to win. And the schedule, the fact that the Packers are back in the playoff race, so, they are going to be playing for something, that really bodes well for Reed, for Watson, for Love. So I'm definitely with you. It's a weird world we're living in where right now, two Packers receivers and Jordan Love is a great fantasy play.
Yeah.
The Commanders and the Cowboys always playing on Thanksgiving at home. They destroyed Washington 45-10 final, cover the 13.5 point spread over 48.5 cashes. The quarterback play here, Dak Prescott, I got to give him his kudos. I've been a big Dak non-believer for as long as Dak's been in the NFL, but he's been fantastic for fantasy and I guess, for actual football as well. Another top 5 quarterback finish. He was quarterback 3 on the week. The last 6 weeks, he's been top 3 5 times, Shovit. Wow. 5 times in the last 6 weeks, he's been a top 3 quarterback finish. And he still gets Seattle. He still gets Philly, who you can throw on. He still gets Buffalo, who you can throw on. He still gets Miami, who you can throw on. And the championship week, he gets the Detroit Lions, who Jordan Love just absolutely destroyed. So Dak Prescott, despite the fact that his running floor is not as high as some of these cream of the crop guys, there's not a guy that you'd probably want in the fantasy playoffs outside of Dak. I have Dak in my other league. I feel great about it. So he's got a really, really good matchup. And I think what also kind of goes hand in hand with that is if you're a Cowboys player in the playoffs, if you're a CD Lamb owner, even if you're a Brandon Cooks owner and Tony Pollard, if you're any of those owners, your schedule is pretty friendly into the playoffs in fantasy football. So as a Cowboys owner, especially even their defense, man, I think you're stacking Dallas Cowboys heading into this playoff run. Tony Pollard, like I mentioned, back-to-back top 12 finishes, RB9 this week with 19 points. The key there, 6 catches. 6 catches is what you like to see from Tony Pollard. Again, back-to-back weeks with the touchdown. So finding the end zone, that regression is back where he wasn't scoring since week 1, found the end zone in back-to-back weeks. Sexy matchups coming up. So I think for the Dallas Cowboys team, it's a full send. What did you see kind of on the Commander side?
Yeah, staying with the quarterback theme, Sam Howell, he's been one of these guys that we talk about, like a lot of passing yards and seeing a lot of fantasy points of fantasy owners, a filler guy. And he had a midday, right? Just a rushing touchdown and 300 yards, no passing touchdowns, but he's up against Miami, who like Dallas have the ability to score a lot of points. So I think that as the way the Commanders are, they're going to be coming from behind a lot. So I think Sam Howell is still a solid play for fantasy and is a startable player. Not in the caliber of Dak, obviously, but he's still a guy that can produce you points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's definitely top 10. He might even be a top 5 quarterback on the season, right? Right. I don't know where he exactly falls, but definitely did not see that coming into this season. And he's one of those unsung heroes that right now, you're in the playoffs and you're facing a guy who's got Sam Howell starting. Part of you's like, oh yeah, that's sick. I'm playing against Sam Howell. But then you look at his game log and the fact that he puts up points and the fact that his team is always down and he throws 50 times a game. Dude, the points are inevitable for that type of offense. The third game of the triple header on Thanksgiving, the Seattle Seahawks at home to the San Francisco 49ers, another divisional matchup. 49ers came on the road with the 12th man and said, we don't care. 31-13, they win this game, cover the 7.5-point spread over 43.5 cashes. It's the same story, different week for the 49ers, Shovit. We've talked about this all year. It's so apparent. They have 4 superstars. CMC is the constant. He's always going off. There's just not a week where CMC doesn't go off. The stats are actually stupid. His worst finish on the season is RB15 with 13 fantasy points. Like, that is insanity. He's got 7 out of 11 weeks where he's a top 5 finisher, 9 out of 11 weeks where he's a top 10 finisher. I mean, there's not a better fantasy player than Christian McCaffrey. But that aside, this was another week. Last week, what was it? Kittle went off. Ayuk went off. CMC had his. Debo had the quiet game. This week, CMC went off. Ayuk had 2 for 50, but he found the end zone. Debo, 7 for 79, but also found the end zone on the ground. What does that mean? The odd man out, George Kittle, 3 catches, 19 yards. This is the roulette of the offense. You're just going to have to pick your poison. It's hard. You're not ever benching one of these guys, in my honest opinion. So you just have to hope that for the next 4 weeks, the Russian roulette, if you're one of these players, does not land on you for the guy that's going to lay the dud, because every week, one of these 4, not CMC, one of these 3, Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo, will be a dud. And this week it was Kittle. On the Seahawks side, talk to me about their running game.
Yeah, so Charbonnet is the running back that got the starting responsibilities with Kenneth Walker out. And, you know, the Seahawks just aren't that good for Charbonnet to be productive in the fantasy world. And it sucks. They're playing a negative game script. Hurts his fantasy productions. You really want to see a game where you could see Charbonnet in his full potential, and you're just not going to get that, right? He did have 4 targets, 14 carries. And next up is the Dallas Cowboys. Again, negative game script. I think that it's just continuing. It's going to be, even if Kenneth Walker's back, it's going to be 50-50 split carries. So you have to go into your matchup knowing that, and just have expectations that he's just he may get into the touch end zone, get you some points that way. But it's just the landscape of the Seahawks team as a whole, and that running back just not being able to be productive in offense.
The problem with the Charbonnet situation is I think they have a quick turnaround, and I'm pretty sure Seahawks play on Thursday night. If I'm not wrong, I think they play on Thursday night, and I think they play the Cowboys on Thursday night, right? Did you just mention, I think it was the Cowboys?
Yeah, they play the Cowboys. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's Thursday night. The Cowboys are playing back-to-back Thursday nights. What's crazy about that, it probably means Ken Walker doesn't play. What's crazier about that is people are dying to find a starting running back that's the lone running back in their backfield, right? So all signs would point, full send, but it's the Cowboys defense. But it's week 13, which I have been circling this week since the beginning of the season. This is the worst bye week situation for both of my teams combined. It's absolutely atrocious. There's 6 teams on bye, and it's the most cream of the crop players you can think of, man. So I think you have to start Charbonnet against the Cowboys, and you're not going to be happy about it. It's going to be very inefficient. You're going to have to hope for some garbage touchdown, or you're going to have to hope that he's catching 5 to 6 passes out of the backfield to salvage his day. Not a good matchup, but I don't think Ken Walker plays on a short week, and he's the only guy. Like, if he's the only guy there and 6 teams are on a bye, let me run through the bye weeks real quick in terms of running backs, right? So you have the Ravens, you have Gus Edwards, Keaton Mitchell, you have the Bills, you have James Cook, Latavius Murray, you have the Raiders, so you have Josh Jacobs, you have the Bears, so you have their stupid running back field, you have the Vikings, so you have Madison Chandler, and you have the Giants, so you have Saquon Barkley. So 6 teams on a bye. I mean, you probably have to start Charbonnet. And even if Ken Walker plays, he's probably limited. So with 6 teams on a bye, maybe you still start Charbonnet. Like, it's one of those weeks where I can't see a world where you're finding a better option.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But how about the Cowboys getting 2 back-to-back Thursday nights? They're so lucky, right? Like, every other team has to play on a Sunday and a Thursday, and then so I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to be just fine. But yeah, you're right. The Seahawks, you have to go with Charbonnet, but you got to curb your expectations for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Not only did we get 3 games on Thursday, this year they said Black Friday, we are going to throw another football game on there. The Dolphins and the Jets on Black Friday, 34-13. Miami destroys New York in New York, cover the 9.5-point spread over 40.5 cashes. I mean, they won the game pretty handily. We talk about fantasy here, Shovit, but Tua Tagovailoa, fantasy-wise, thoughts?
Not very good, man. Not very good. He only has 2 games over 18 points since week 6. And I don't think it's his fault really. You got Raheem Mostert and you got Achane coming back. Just they run the ball and pass the ball. Like it's a really good mix. So the good thing about the two owners is that they play the Titans next week, so you have to have them out there at least 1 week. But just have a backup ready. Maybe Jordan Love, and we'll talk about him later. But it's not looking good as far as fantasy wise for Tua for sure, despite the wins. Also, staying with Dolphins, Jeff Wilson got the RB2 responsibilities with Achane injured, and Salvin Ahmed was also out, but he's coming back next week, so there's not much you can do about that. You'll see his efficiency, 11 carries, average 5.1 yards per carry, but I don't think that that's anything that you can use to have Wilson on your team, especially since Achane's coming back. And just Waddle and Hill had both strong days, so that's just going to continue on, and nothing new there. So.
Yeah. I mean, the Tua Tagovailoa thing is weird. I think he is definitely a system quarterback. I think he's definitely matchup based. Like if you look at the games where he's had great games, right? He was QB1 against the Chargers. They're probably one of the worst defenses in the league. He was QB2 against Denver early in the season when Denver was one of the worst teams in the league. And he was QB3 against the Carolina Panthers. We're going to draft first overall. All right. So those are the 3 games where Tua has put up startable numbers. And then you have QB22 against Philadelphia. 22, right? 22. How many 20-man leagues are you playing in fantasy football where 22nd quarterback gets started? None. 26, he was QB 26 against the Patriots, and then he was also QB 26 against the Jets. So you're having complete opposite ends of the spectrum. You're not having a guy that you can consistently start and has a floor. You're having a guy where either he's booming or he's completely busting for you. So he is a complete matchup-based player. The schedule is not great. He's got the Jets, he's got Dallas, and he's got Baltimore. Yikes. I don't want any part of Tua Tagovailoa. What's crazy about all that, though, is it does not matter for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is the MVP. Tyreek Hill could have Deion Sanders and Darrelle Revis double teaming him in their primes, and he'd probably still get open. So I think the MVP talks for Tyreek Hill just continue to get louder and louder, although I think probably Jalen Hurts is going to win it after that stupid performance that he had. But that's the situation with Tua, right? And he did this last year too. And I wanted us to not fall into this trap early this season. I said it. I was like, he's going to be good against the bad teams and he's going to be okay against the good teams because first read Tua is fantastic. When the first read's not there, he's not so great. So that's the reality of Tua. I don't think you're going to start him in the playoffs. I think you are looking elsewhere, right. And it's a struggle bus in terms of where you're looking. This week, I'm starting Russell Wilson against Houston, and it's a week-to-week thing. Houston's not that bad of a matchup, but the other options are Baker Mayfield. Kenny Pickett is who I thought of starting this week. Shove it. I thought of starting Kenny Pickett. That's where we're at with the waiver wire, with quarterbacks, with 6 teams on a bye. So if you don't have Russell Wilson or Baker Mayfield, I honestly think Kenny Pickett might be your best option in terms of streaming quarterbacks this week.
That's where we're at. That's tough. That's tough.
Week 13 is the worst week, dude. It's the worst week for me. Way too many buys. Taking it over to Sunday, the first game on the board, the Saints and the Falcons in a divisional matchup. Falcons win this game at home 24-15, cover the 1.5 point dog spread under 42.5 cashes. I am sick of watching Derek Carr play football. Are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Derek Carr needs to get his shit together. Like 0 touchdowns for Carr last game. He throws that pick 6 and he's like, oh yeah, just kudos to the defense for doing really well. No, man, you can't throw a pick 6 when you're in the red zone like that. What are you doing? And what sucks for Carr is like when you were talking about guys that you could stream, I was like, maybe Derek Carr. But what sucks is the injuries in the receiving core for Derek Carr and the Saints. Olave getting concussed, leaving in the second half was brutal for fantasy. Is brutal for fantasy. So it was not brutal because he still got 18 points.
Great day. Yeah,
still had a great day second half. And so there's a potential that he doesn't play week 13. Michael Thomas is on IR, and Shaheed is looking like he's going to be out. So what does that mean? The guy that you hate the most could potentially be a good start. Taysom Hill. Could step up, have a big day. Also, Alvin Kamara probably has a better day than he did last week. But in terms of wide receiver 1, I'm also in like the injury and bye week situation. So I'm considering A.T. Perry. I mean, there's no other receivers out there. Like, who else is Derek Carr going to throw it to? And so I think A.T. Perry may be someone that you might want to look into have a filler spot. But you're right, man. Derek Carr, he's just got to step it up.
Dude, yeah, I don't think Olave is going to play. We've seen like maybe one player, Alexander Madison is the only one I can think of that had a concussion and ended up playing the following week. So maybe the fact that it was a mid-game concussion changes it. I don't know. I still think he doesn't play. It's probably a long shot. They're playing the Lions, and Jordan Love just absolutely carved up the Detroit Lions this week, and they're playing at home. So they're playing in New Orleans. Alvin Kamara's receiving props might be something that's worth looking into. Taysom Hill, any sort of props might, like combined yards, might be something looking into. But yeah, dude, A.T. Perry is actually not a bad option. I don't think he's a bad option. He's actually a decent receiver. He was a decent receiver in college. He's a big body. He can go up and get the football. I mean, and like you said, process of elimination. Who are they going to throw the football to here? I mean, we have seen a world where Kamara had like 19 targets on checkdowns. So could that be this week? Certainly. But against the Lions in a shootout, I think the Lions are going to be able to score. The Saints are going to have to keep up. You definitely want to have somebody on the field, and with 6 teams on bye, not the worst option, A.T. Perry. But Bijan on the other side, man, Bijan is so good. I'm so glad he's good. I'm so glad they're unleashing him. It still could be better. 2 touchdowns, but the usage still is not like the guy because Tyler Algier still exists. What's crazy is all of that, like underperforming, all of that. We want more from Bijan, all of that. Man, it just feels like there's something to be desired. He's RB6 on the season, Jovet. He is a top 6 running back, despite the fact that there's a guy eating 40% of his touches. Can you imagine the world where Bijan Robinson is touching the football like Christian McCaffrey? I didn't overhype this man, bro. This man is a freaking beast. Next year, I hope Tyler Allgeier's gone. I hope Arthur Smith's gone. I hope there's a world where people view Bijan Robinson and the usage similar to like Eckler's and those guys. And he is a top 3, undoubtedly a top 3 pick. And the best thing about Bijan is if you had Bijan and you're making the playoffs, despite the, lackluster, whatever, I can't even say lackluster, RB6, despite the non-20 plus point performances that you expect from your number 1 pick, right? Despite that, if you're making the playoffs, he has a really, really favorable schedule. You get the Jets, who you can run on. You get Carolina, but your playoffs are Indianapolis and Chicago. So, Dude, though that I tried to trade for Bijan, no go, didn't happen. Had a chance last night, did not get the job done. But that is a very favorable schedule. So Bijan Robinson, one of the few running backs in the playoffs that I'm like, man, full send this guy. Looks really good. Usage is great. Situation's great. And the schedule is great. So finally start to see Bijan really be Bijan. It only took 12 weeks. And hopefully, the rest of the season is just touchdowns on touchdowns on touchdowns. Let's kick it over to Cincinnati, where your Steelers were in town and played a disgusting divisional game. Quite kind of like what the games the Steelers typically play nowadays, but they won this game 16-10, covered the 2.5 point spread under 36.5 cashes. Shove it. I'm going to let you talk, but all I want to say is how crazy that the first week Matt Canada gets fired and the Steelers put up 400 yards of offense. It's almost like he was the problem, but I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I think it just riled up the crowd. And I think that riled up the team and they were able to get connected. They were able to run the ball well. And we saw a big Freiermuth day. The Muth was Luth. Those downfield, middle of the field throws to Freiermuth was money all throughout the game. And they continue to target him. 9 receptions, 120 yards. So you want to see those passing plays down the field, and Kenny Pickett did a really good job of connecting with not only Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, and George Pickens as well. You want to see Deontay Johnson get that catch? That was really just ridiculous that he didn't get that touchdown and drops the ball there. Maybe good defense, but come on, Deontay Johnson, do better there. But also one other thing I want to add about the Steelers is this the return of Najee, right? With this new offensive regime, right? Najee finishes with 99 yards and a touchdown. And I know Jalen Warren's there. He's still going to be there. But you could be in a situation where Najee or Jalen Warren are a decent enough start. Next matchup is at home against Arizona. So certainly a favorable matchup. You can send both of them. Start them both, right? And pick up Freiermuth too, by the way. He's probably in the waivers. You got to go out and go get him. But on the Bengals side, let me switch it over. My thoughts and prayers to all Bengals players, fantasy owners, man. Like, that offense looks terrible, right? The only good thing that you can take from that is pick up Jacksonville defense because they play the Bengals next week, and they also play the Browns the following week. So there's back-to-back matchups that you can have with the Jacksonville defense. But yeah, man, Bengals are not looking good, and rightfully so. No Burrow. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, the Chase Mixon outlook for the rest of the season sucks.
Yeah.
T. Higgins, I was listening to fantasy footballers, and they were saying you could drop T. Higgins. I mean, think about that. You can drop T. Higgins in fantasy football like that. That is insanity, but that is the world that we're in. And it's another Garrett Wilson. It's another Devontae Adams. Like, you have a superstar receiver playing with a quarterback that does not belong in the NFL. So you have to temper your expectations, but you're also in a situation where, are you seriously considering benching Chase? Because if Chase puts up 25, then you're going to feel like an idiot for putting him on your bench, but he's such a good player that sometimes these players, it doesn't matter the quarterback, right? You can get 3 throws. Chase had like 5 targets and 2 of them were tipped to him and he caught a tip pass, right? So like, without those, he has an awful game, but that's also because it's Ja'Marr Chase that he's got good awareness, can figure that out and catch that ball and make it respectable. So you're playing that devil's advocate or double-edged sword, but with Ja'Marr Chase, you have to start him. Like, I don't know how you don't start Ja'Marr Chase, considering he's like your number 1 pick, considering who he is, all that stuff, right? Now, Joe Mixon, you only start if it's a good running matchup, and they don't have a lot of those right now. They don't have a lot coming up either. So the inefficiency, the stacking 9 in the box, because who's gonna be fearful of Jake Browning beating them down the field? Nobody. So I think the only player you can start in this offense right now is Ja'Marr Chase. I can't start Joe Mixon. I won't do it because they can't get to the red zone enough to, for me to have a salvageable touchdown from Joe Mixon. He's got to catch 6 or 7 passes to be relevant if that's not the case. And right now he's not doing that either. And when their run game is not working, they deviate from it because they're not good. So they're going to be losing a lot. So I don't love any of that for Joe Mixon. The only saving grace is, again, he can catch passes. So if they're losing a lot, dump offs to Mixon can make him salvageable and have some sort of a floor. But I'm in the playoffs. I'm trying to win the whole thing. I don't want a floor guy like Joe Mixon who can give me like a 4 or a 6 because he couldn't get in the end zone and he ran it 23 times for 65 yards. So I don't want that. I don't like Joe Mixon rest of the season, but Ja'Marr Chase, you kind of have to start. There's really no other world around it. But that's just the reality, man. It's, again, so many people going into the playoffs with these amazing players that are in awful situations. So you're just like, I'm basically just letting the cards unfold and play out as they will, because your decision making is so hampered. Like, do you bench Ja'Marr Chase and go pick up just a random receiver we just talked about? Do you bench Ja'Marr Chase and go pick up A.T. Perry because he's the wide receiver 1 on that team right now and they have to throw the football? They're going to be losing to the Lions. Like, those are realistic conversations that will be had. I would not be surprised if A.T. Perry outscores Ja'Marr Chase. But in what world is somebody being like, I have to start A.T. Perry 2 weeks before the playoffs start? Like, nobody. But sometimes you have to make those decisions to be the ones. I just don't blame anybody that chooses not to do that, because in what world are you starting A.T. Perry over Ja'Marr Chase?
That's so funny, because I'm in that same exact situation where I have Ja'Marr Chase and I'm like remiss to start him, right? Like, I can't do anything about it. I'm in the playoffs, so I have to continue. And for me, it makes it a little bit easier because Olave got hurt, so A.T. Perry is going to be my filler option. But you're right, man. You just can't get. You're expecting wide receiver 1 numbers like with your second pick.
Yep.
The good thing is, like, Ja'Marr Chase, if you watch his like post-game interview, he's pissed, right? In the locker room, he's like, he doesn't even know what the hell is going on. Like, so hopefully like that does something. And so you continue keeping in your lineup so that they target their number 1 receiver, but the situation sucks.
Yeah, you definitely start him, but you just have to know that he could just not be good. And it's not because Chase sucks. It's not because he was a bust, any of that. The situation is just awful.
Right.
Speaking of awful situations, the Carolina Panthers and the Tennessee Titans are in 2 very bad situations, and they just happen to play each other. The Titans win this game 17-10 at home, cover the 3.5-point spread, under 36.5 cashes. I mean, the Panthers are a dumpster fire, Shovit. They're an absolute dumpster fire. I mean, what is there really to talk about with this team?
Dude, it sucks, man. They're a dumpster fire, man. This is like their second coach that they have fired in 2 years, and it's like over $50 million that they paid for these coaches. So that owner, he must have a lot of money because he's got some bad investments and he's losing money. But I'm looking at him like, was it a premature fire? I'm probably thinking maybe, but you see what Houston is doing with the 2nd overall pick when you had the number 1 overall pick. So the owner is probably pissed off, right? He's upset. The only good thing about this team is this Chuba Hubbard. He's a shining star in this offense. Last week, finished with a solid 17.7 half-point PPR. The only thing is he's got a tough matchup in the running game against Tampa Bay. So, I think you still start him, but he may be the only guy. If Thielen is not able to produce, he's probably the only guy that you can go out and trust from this Panthers offense.
Yeah, I mean, can you? Like Miles Sanders is getting almost as much work as he is. So I don't know. Like it's a week to week thing, right? The Titans are actually a decent run defense you can throw against him, and Chuba had a decent day. So is it matchups? Like who's going to be the guy? Obviously week 13, everything gets thrown out the window. You're basically just finding a roster spot and starting them because you could be in a situation this week, Shova, truly where you cannot field a full roster. We have 4 bench spots in sleeper. Mm-hmm. I have Saquon Barkley on a bye. I have Devontae Adams on a bye. I have Justin Jefferson, who's returned from IR, on a bye. I have somebody else on a bye. Who's another guy that there's somebody else. Can't think of who it is, but I legitimately looked at my bench in both of my leagues and was like, I can't drop a guy. Like
you can't drop him.
Let's play this game right now because this is very, very important. I'm going to pull up my roster in our league in week 13. I have to win. My bench right now is Josh Allen bye, Saquon Barkley bye, Devontae Adams bye, Zay Flowers bye, and Dallas Goedert, who's out currently, but he could actually play this week. Small fractured arm, I don't understand. So could I drop Dallas Goedert? Maybe. Yes, I could. If I had to drop somebody, it's Dallas Goedert. But like, I don't like doing that, and there's nobody else.
Yeah,
it sucks.
Like,
luckily, I'm able to field a full roster there because I picked up tight ends and stuff last week to make it happen, right? But let me tell you my other team. We'll go over to my other team because I want to talk about this. This is insane. I have this week 13, Saquon on a bye, Adams on a bye, JJ on a bye. So I am sitting here with a flex spot that I either have to start Zach Charbonnet against Dallas, which like he's projected 12.3 points because he's the only running back, but they don't understand that the Cowboys are a good defense. Or am I going into free agency and am I picking up one of these guys we've talked about? Jayden Reed, free agent. Rashee Rice, a free agent. Christian Watson, a free agent. Like, am I going out there and picking up one of those guys to drop one of those players just so I can field a full roster? Or if I can afford to lose, is this one of those few weeks where you're biting the bullet because you're either already in the playoffs, winning or losing does not impact you in the standings one way or the other? If that's the case, would this be the only situation where you'd be like, fine, I understand why you would not field a full roster?
Yeah, I mean, I would think about dropping Charbonnet and picking up Rashee Rice. Or if there's someone else that you mentioned, I don't know if there's anyone on that team that you can drop. But I would be more likely to, I'd feel more confident in a Chiefs offense with Rashee Rice, who had 2 drops, but yet still got into the end zone and still saw targets over Charbonnet against Dallas Cowboys with a tough matchup personally.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I think I do have the Charbonnet is the maneuverability in that league for sure. But in our league, if I hadn't picked up Dalton Schultz, or if I hadn't picked up Jake Ferguson last week and a defense last week, I would be sitting here like, I can't drop Allen, Barkley, Adams. I'm screwed. Like I'm just totally screwed. So, that is the reality of the bye week situation. Back to this game, the Panthers real quickly. Adam Thielen, man, dude just hit like an age wall all of a sudden. 1 catch, 2 yards, 3 targets against the Tennessee pass defense, who you're supposed to just absolutely annihilate. The last 5 weeks, this dude's been wide receiver 23, 31, 39, 48, and 120th. Like those are unstartable. Outside of this week, the targets are still there though. So that's kind of the, what do you do with this number? 11 targets, 6 targets, 10 targets, 11 targets, 3 targets, right? Besides this 3 target, 1 catch game, he's got 6 or more targets the last 4 games with double digit targets in 3 of them. So, do you still start him because the targets are there? Are you looking for other options because the production isn't meeting the targets? Like where's your head at with Adam Thielen if you have him on your roster?
Man, I think you got to give him one more week, man. I think you just have to. You've seen the production, and it's going to be really hard to pivot this week. And maybe you just have to. The sample size is too little for this one day to see that he didn't produce for you to not go through with it. But it's a tough situation with the Panthers offense. Hopefully, this new coach can get the team motivated, and Thielen can be back into what we are used to seeing with him in the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, let's get the production matching the targets for Adam Thielen. The Indianapolis Colts were at home taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They covered the 2.5-point favorite spread, win the game 27-20, over 44.5 cashes. The story here, let me kick us off. Jonathan Taylor, amazing day, 15 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. But today we find out that he injured his thumb. And not only did he injure his thumb, but they're saying putting him on the IR is a realistic possibility.
Wow.
And you're in week 12. He's guaranteed to miss 4 weeks if he gets put on the IR, which means your best case scenario is he's back for the semifinals and the finals, or just the finals of your league, which at that point, he's coming off of IR. How healthy is he? How much are they going to use him the first game back? Now, there's a chance he doesn't go in the IR. There's a chance he misses like 2 to 3 weeks. There's a chance he misses 2 weeks, whatever the case may be. But long story short, he finally gets healthy. He's finally getting 70% of the touches, and all of a sudden he gets hurt. All this means is the Zach Mossers are back. Zach Moss is back. You pick up Zach Moss. He's a free agent probably in most leagues, because after the recent JT usage going up, there was no reason to roster Zach Moss. All of a sudden, there's a reason to roster Zach Moss. You have to go out and pick up this guy. I'm trying to think of a waiver claim that's more important right now this week than Zach Moss, and I don't think there's one, right? I think Zach Moss is top of the waiver claim. You go out and grab him. You're instantly going to be able to start him at least 2 weeks, if not more. So bye week, especially this week. I mean, if you're the number one waiver guy, you just got to get from God. With this Jonathan Taylor news, because then you can go out and start Zach Moss, and Zach Moss has proven to be really, really good and productive when he gets to play. So I think that's a win. But the pass catchers on the Colts, Shovit, what'd you see there?
Yeah, well, real quick, for Zach Moss, you go to your bank and you see how much money is in your fab, and you put everything in Zach Moss. Yeah. If there's people ahead of you, you pay them and see if they can not pick up Zach Moss, so you can get him with your waiver claim if you don't have the number one waiver claim. That's what you do with Zach Moss, man.
I wish you collude.
Do whatever you can, because you got to get Zach Moss on your team, 100%. But another guy from the Colts, Josh Downs, he saw 13 targets last game, similar, I think, same as Michael Pittman, but he only hauled in 5, right? So they play the Titans next week. I know we just talked about the Titans not being a pretty good pass defense against who was it? Against Panthers. Carolina Panthers. Yeah, but I think that Josh Downs is a quality pickup for you. He scored 66.5 PPR points from weeks 5 to 8. He's been injured. That's 11th most among wide receivers. So he's a guy that you can go out and pick up in hopes that he can be a filler spot for you in the next coming weeks.
Can't wait to see the week 13 matchups. Gardner Minshew's versus Baker Mayfield's versus Kenny Pickett's versus... It's going to be crazy, man. Kenny Pickett and Gardner Minshew are going to be possible starters in week 13 of fantasy football.
I didn't think we would get here. I didn't think we would ever in this season. I didn't think Kenny Pickett would ever warrant a start. If you're in a QB, one QB team, I didn't think so.
Even if it's like a dual quarterback league, bro, what world was Kenny Pickett getting started? But dude, here we are. I know it's only 1 week. It could be nothing. But still, I think you have to love the fact that the Colts are playing the Titans of all teams, and Gardner Minshew can be productive. I think that's probably a better option than Kenny Pickett, realistically. Yeah. Disgusting game in New York. I think I already talked about one disgusting game in New York, but both teams in New York suck. All games in New York are disgusting. The Giants and the Patriots, 10-7 final. The Giants won. They won this game, 4.5-point underdogs. They win the game outright. Under 34.5 was an absolute lock. But another game, another player for you, another injury.
Yes, Demario Douglas in his second concussion protocol of the season. So it's most likely that he misses next week. He saw 9 targets for leading the field. And, I'm looking at that team. I'm like, can I trust Devontae Parker? Can I trust Juju as a filler for Douglas? And out of those guys, I'm leaning Devontae Parker just because I feel like it's going to be better than Juju. But if I can get some of these other guys that we talked about, I'm definitely going to lean that way. Probably stay away from anyone that's not Stevenson in the Patriots lane.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's true. I do think if Bailey Zappi is starting a full game, there's some sort of an optimistic outlook or an unknown outlook where you could start Devontae Parker because maybe Zappi gunslings it a lot more than Mac Jones does, right? So the unknown is kind of what you're latching onto if that's the case. But yes, if Mac Jones is starting or if they're splitting time like they did this week, which just makes no sense. I don't know what type of strategy that is. Then yeah, you can't really start anybody besides Stevenson on this offense, which sucks because Demario Douglas looked good. There was a drive where he got 4 or 5 targets, 3 catches, and you thought that you were going to see 15 plus fantasy points from him, which he was well on his way to do. So it's unfortunate to see. Concussion probably means, like you said, especially because it's his second one on the season, probably going to miss at least a week. Running backs in this game, like you said, Stevenson, great. Stevenson's been good. Barkley, bad. Stevenson, good. Stevenson, 21 carries, 98 yards, and a touchdown. 5 catches, only 9 yards, but don't care when you're catching the ball 5 times. His rest of the season schedule, the Chargers, the Steelers, the Broncos, who you can run all over, the Buffalo Bills, who he can run all over, all plus matchups for Ramondre Stevenson. We're here. All of these shithole running backs who had awful starts to the season are all the running backs you want in the playoffs because they have amazing matchups. Barkley, on the other hand, awful. 12 carries, 46 yards, only caught the ball one time for 6 yards, and he is on a bye, so it's already a loss. Then he's got Green Bay, who's fine. They're actually not bad against the run, so that's a good matchup for him. But then he gets the Saints, he gets the Eagles, and then he gets the Rams with Aaron Donald. So not great for Saquon world. I have Saquon in both leagues, so all of my worlds are spiraling. It's just so frustrating to be a Saquon owner, man. Like, I don't know how else to. I feel so bad for the guy. I feel so bad for just what the team is, the position that the team puts him in, where it's like 95% of the plays are designed to go to Saquon. The defense knows it. The world knows it. Everybody knows it. He gets hit so hard. He's getting like ripped by like 3 different guys. He's already a guy that's injury prone. I don't know how much more tread on the Saquon tires are left beyond this year. Like that, I think they're just like working him to the ground, knowing that they didn't extend him. They franchise tagged him. So after this season, he's gone anyways. They probably won't pay him. So they're working his ass to the ground only for him to not be productive fantasy wise, not really be productive on the stat sheet, but get bruised up and battered down and, all of the above. So it's really, really unfortunate. This week, Stevenson was RB10. Saquon was RB41. Like that cannot fly. I'm in the playoffs probably in both of my leagues, and Saquon's my RB1, Shobit. I cannot feel confident going into any playoff matchup right now with Saquon Barkley as RB1.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do though? You got to stick with it. Silver lining, DeVito got a win. I don't know how against the Patriots. So maybe that helps the Giants moving forward. But yeah, the matchups looks really tough. Really.
How is Belichick not fired after DeVito beat him? Like, I mean, we thought he'd been pretty, we thought it was like bottom, like this is rock bottom for the Patriots. And I'm like, okay, they finally get a good matchup where they're playing against DeVito and the Giants, and DeVito and the Giants beat the Patriots.
Oh, you know how? It's because Mac Jones is your quarterback, and Bailey Zappi is second half quarterback, so he doesn't have a lot to work with right now. They have the 3rd pick in the NFL draft next year. So hey,
quarterback,
if they get a quarterback, things
100%.
turn around.
It's 100. If they are a top 5 draft pick, I think Drake May to the Patriots is going to spell disaster for the rest of the NFL. So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
The Jaguars and Texans played a fun game in Houston. Houston's been a fun team all season long. Can't quite come up with the victory here. 24-21 final. Jags win the game on the road, covered the 1.5 point spread under 47.5 cashes. If you're watching the live stream with me and Shobit, you're watching me just be pissed off because Shobit just kept doing the stupid CJ Stroud dance, and freaking Randy on the pod. If you're listening, Randy, shout out to you for being such a good supporter, but God damn it, Randy and Shove It. We're just CJ Stroud dancing all over me. He had a hell of a day. Talk to me about CJ Stroud, your boy.
Dude, CJ Stroud, man. Amazing day. The gift that keeps on giving. 300 yards, 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 1 rushing touchdown, 30.56 fantasy points. And you know who's benefiting from all this? It's Tank Dell. He finished with 14.7 fantasy points. It's funny because you were like, hey, if you have Dell and you have Chase, there's a world where you start Dell over Chase.
100. And that is not a question right now. Tank Dell, you start over Chase 10 out of 10 times. The fact that we had to talk about A.T. Perry tells us where we're at in the Jamar Chase world.
Yeah, I mean, CJ Stroud's playing MVP-like game. You would like to see him come back, and it's that freaking doink of a field goal. Oh my goodness, like straight perfect kick. I mean, it looked like it had the accuracy and everything, but it just doinked right in the bottom of the field goal post. But hey, you know what? He still had a great game, and so it's just unfortunate for CJ Stroud owners. But 30.56 points. What are you gonna? You take that definitely. But keeping with the Texans theme, Devin Singletary, he was on the field for 49 snaps compared to 11 of Dameon Pierce, and also caught the ball 6 times for 54 yards. I think that moving forward, Devin Singletary warrants a start on your team. I think that he is the clear RB1, and Dameon Pierce is far behind him at this point. And I think that, with a game where they're not coming from behind, I think Singletary should see more opportunities and definitely warrants a start.
Yeah, I think All of that is correct. What I love about being a Singletary owner in both my leagues is, yes, the snap count in Pierce's first game back completely favored Singletary. Even if you're like, it's Pierce's first game back, right? Obviously, he's going to see a limited snap count. They're going to work his way in. That's totally fine. But this is an air it out offense, right? So running backs are the sugar on top, right? The cherry on top of this offense, basically, because they're a pass first offense. What you love to see, though, is your running back catching the ball 6 times. If CJ Stroud's slinging the football as much as he is, and your running back is still 5 catches plus, I don't care who that running back is. Chad has done it all season and showed us that you could catch the ball 6 times and run it efficiently and be a fantasy stud. So I think if Singletary can consistently catch the football, because Houston's usually down, they love to throw the football. They're in a lot of shootouts, and Stroud deserves to throw the football because he's so good. If that's the case, and you're seeing Singletary catch the ball, then all of a sudden the once valueless running back field now has value, even with Pierce back. Singletary is the guy. I really hope you're right. I really hope it's not just a working his workload back in, because clearly we've seen it this season. Singletary's the better player. He's running better behind this offensive line. He's fitting better with this team. I'm not going to sit here and say he's the better player. I don't know if he's the better player between the two if we're just stacking them up 1v1, but right now Singletary is making more out of his opportunities with this team than Pierce is. So I think that deserves Singletary to be started. I agree with you. I think you can start him in your flex spot pretty comfortably, especially considering the fact that, again, in situations where they're not, if it's a good matchup where they can run the football, he's run the ball effectively. And again, in situations where it's bad, right now, you're trusting CJ Stroud with your life, basically. This man can run the ball. This man can pass the ball. All of the doubt of CJ Stroud being like he's a pocket passer, he doesn't use his legs enough, those were doubts. But we saw the Georgia game, and we saw the fact that this was something that he could unlock if he needed to. He could unlock, if at all, some coach in the NFL was like, hey, Stroud, there's another level to your game that may not feel natural, but you can use it when push comes to shove. And that's what he did. That's why he got to 30 points, that rushing touchdown, right? Without that rushing touchdown, right, Stroud had an awesome game, but his fantasy output is good and not great. It's good and not great. That rushing touchdown, the rushing yards makes this man all of a sudden, dude, he's creeping there. He's almost in that echelon where you're in the echelon of guys that you want as your QB1 in fantasy football, the Hurtses, the Allens. So if Stroud starts using his legs, bro, my goodness, the next 3-4 years in fantasy football, this guy's going top 5 in terms of quarterbacks easily. Let's talk about the running backs on the other side real quick before we get to the next game. Travis Etienne, 3rd straight game where he's RB19 or worse after such an awesome start. What's noticeable is it's his 3rd straight week where his snap count was 60%. In the 60s, right? And that's after 5 straight weeks where he played 80+% of snap count for his team. Now, is that injury? Are they managing the workload? It could be a combination of both things, right? The Jags offense, they were winning a bunch of games, running the ball well. We were still like, Trevor Lawrence still doesn't seem like he's finding his groove. The last 2 to 3 weeks, all of a sudden we're like, whoa, this team has turned a corner. They found their groove. But how is this team finding a groove? But the player that's not benefiting from that is Etienne. Is the groove for this team Lawrence to Ridley? Is that when this team is at their peak form? They're airing the football down the field because that's what Trevor Lawrence can do. That's what Calvin Ridley can do. Is Etienne the complement to this air it out attack? Is it vice versa? Is it a combination of two? That's what we're trying to dissect here. But 3 straight weeks where the Jags finally are clicking, Ridley is finally clicking, Lawrence looks like what Lawrence should look like, and Etienne actually isn't producing. It's a little bit of a red flag, right? Like the offense is peaking, but the one player, the running back, is not producing. So I don't know if those things coincide. If that's not really correlating statistics, we'll find out, I guess. But definitely something to monitor. Dearness Johnson's the backup. Tank Bigsby's not even the backup anymore. Dearness Johnson's the backup, and he's playing quite a bit. He's on the field, I think, for like 35 to 40% of the snaps. So that's definitely something to note. Jags offense. Tough schedule, though. You get Cleveland, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, and then Carolina. The Cleveland, Baltimore, you absolutely hate. Tampa Bay, whatever. Carolina in the finals, if you get there, that's fantastic. So not the best schedule heading into the playoffs, but the championship matchup could be great if you're a Jags owner. The Denver Broncos and the Cleveland Browns in Denver. Denver's won 5 straight. I don't know where this team is coming from. 29-12 final. They covered the 1.5-point spread. They put up 29 points against the Browns defense, who I started. Still can't make quite sense of what the hell happened there. Over 37.5 cashes. I mean, I'll let you take it away because your first sentence is how I felt about the Browns defense all Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, they look hopeless and lost as far as that offense goes, right? That DTR going out with that terrible hit that he had, and so and it's tough to put any faith on this team, and so PJ Walker is going to be the quarterback moving forward probably if DTR's out. So if that offense is looking really, really just not gelling well, and despite being a top defense statistically, we were doing a trivia during the live thread where what's the best yards allowed defense, and that's the Cleveland Browns, right? So they're doing good statistically, but in terms of fantasy wise, it's really hard to trust them. They're going against the Rams next week. I think you have to pivot, right? Myles Garrett got hurt. He hurt his shoulder last week as well, so you need to monitor that. But if he doesn't play, I mean, that's a big loss on their defense as well. So I don't know anyone from the Browns that you could comfortably feel good about. Amari Cooper is also out. Jerome Ford maybe, but it's just all around, the team is not looking well.
Yeah, the offense sucks. It's another bad backup quarterback situation. Rookie, just not ready to handle the offense. It hinders the offense as a whole with the receivers, the running backs. I think you still have to start Ford. Again, bye weeks. You're just in a situation where you don't have much of a choice. But I do think the Amari Cooper situation sucks because he's been such a productive receiver, consistently under the radar. But right now, I don't know that DTR can support him. I think if anything, if you're, really just desperate, David Njoku, probably the only pass catcher that DTR probably will consistently support. It's DTR. So it's not like we're expecting a rookie quarterback to just produce it consistently for a pass catcher, but the only silver lining, the one guy that he's force fed is David Njoku. So if you're starting somebody there, Njoku's probably the only bet. But on the Broncos side, 5 wins in a row. Javonte Williams, you like the workload, right? 18 carries for 65 yards, 3 catches on 6 yards on 6 targets. So 6 targets, 18 carries, 24 opportunities for him. So you like to see that. They have McLaughlin, they got P. Ryan, but it's definitely Williams' backfield. So right now, he's probably the most comfortable start out of the Denver offense. Sutton as well, didn't get a touchdown this game, but still 3 catches for 61 yards. He's still the best receiver on this offense, and he's probably the only one that's startable. So Williams and Sutton right now, not amazing, but the workload for Williams and the touchdowns that come for Sutton, you kind of have to keep rolling the dice there.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like if you're in a position where you have to think about whether you start Ridley or Sutton, chances are your team is probably not that good.
Nope.
And you're just making if you don't have Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, and all these guys now, you're probably SOL, but you still have to make that decision.
I know. It's like, why am I like racking my brain around whether I'm starting, Ridley or Rashee Rice when at the end of the day, it's not going to be any, the difference is going to be a mere 3-4 points there. And it's not really even going to make a difference in the matchup as a whole. That's not to say it can't. It's not to say that Ridley couldn't have 40, but the numbers and the probability tells us that, the fractional difference is really not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. Dude, I've been waiting to talk about this game. The Rams at the Cardinals, the LA Rams, or should I call them the LA Kyrens? Because Kyren season is officially here, man. Let's talk about Kyren Williams. The Rams won 37-14. They covered the 3.5 point spread over 45.5 cashes. Easy game against Arizona. Kyren Williams, first game back, 16 carries only, but 143 rushing yards, 6 catches for 61 yards, and 2 touchdowns through the air. Here's what's crazy about Kyren Williams. Everybody knows that he's been hurt. Some people may not have thrown him back into the lineup. You're stupid if you didn't, because all of the trajectory of what he got hurt and the bye week and everything meant that this wasn't a typical first game back. He was on a high ankle injury, right? Typically 0 weeks, 3 weeks. He's already recovered for 3+ weeks, and he's had his bye, and he had a full workload in practice all week through his bye. So you knew that this wasn't, hey, he needs to come in and get some of the snaps. This was Kyren Williams coming back and reassuming the role. Darrell Henderson, who had been fantastic, got cut. Like, I don't think you're cutting Darrell Henderson if you didn't expect Kyren Williams to come in and assume all of the workload. And he did. He absolutely did that. Some crazy numbers about this man. He's played in 7 games this year. 5 of the 7 games, he's been RB7 or better.
Wow.
4 of the 7 games, he was RB4 or better. This man, on a points per game average at the running back position, is only behind the great CMC. So Kyren Williams right now is an absolute monster in fantasy football. I don't know why he's catching the ball as much as he is. He was doing that early in the season, and they were like, wait, we have Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. We can throw them the football. So then he didn't catch the ball as much. And this first week back, they were like, yo, man, we just got to get you back into the offense. So I don't know that he's going to catch the ball as much as he did this week or catch that many touchdown passes, but the usage, the workload, the fact that he's on the field 70+% of the time, and it's just Royce Freeman on the other end who's not there for passing down situations whatsoever. Kyren Williams right now, man, full send. And then, hey, you want the cherry on top of it? Look at this playoff schedule. The Washington Commanders, the Saints, and the New York Giants. So 2 out of those 3 weeks, that man should be a top 5 running back. I am so happy about Kyren Williams. So glad I kept him in my IR. So glad I started him the first week he came back, and he came through and won me the week. So sorry he was at the expense against you, but go ahead.
Hey, it was fun because I had my CJ Stroud moment, and then you had your Kyren Williams moment in the second half of the games. So Kyren Williams is a guy that I think you got on your waivers, right? You picked him up. It wasn't someone that you drafted, and so to see a guy like that winning you weeks is solid. Kyren Williams coming back after an injury and performing is the exact opposite what James Conner is doing. So James Conner comes back from the injury, but is not the same James Conner, right? He's yet to hit double-digit points since he's been back. What do you do with that? They face Pittsburgh next, and you're like, oh, that's a great matchup. But the problem is Michael Carter, an RB2, is getting 38% of the touches. He's seeing those passing downs.
A lot of third down back, a lot of third down work.
Right, and that Conner his value is just so much lower. So, I mean, if I'm at this point where I'm like, considering benching Conner, and that's because I'm like it's a shit show, right? Like it's a Conner or Najee Harris. Like who do I want? And I think I'm gonna lean in Najee Harris with the offense kind of gelling right now. But it's a terrible situation. If you have to, I guess you do start Conner, but just know that there's a guy, Michael Carter. It's no longer just Conner's backfield anymore, especially since coming back of the injury.
Yeah, like that was his thing. Inefficient, but it's his backfield, right? He'll be inefficiently running the ball, but he'll also catch the ball 4 to 6 times because it's his backfield. He's on there. He's their third down. He's their first down, second down, fourth down. Right now, it's crazy because Michael Carter came out of nowhere. The Jets just cut him last week, and they picked him, and this team picked him up, and they picked him up and immediately played him almost 40% of the snaps. Like that's insane to me. That leads me to believe that Conner is working his way back from a health injury. Conner may just kind of not be 100%, and that could be the rest of the season outlook. Or James Conner is also getting up there in age. He could just, quite frankly, have hit that age wall, right? He's been in the league for a little bit now, and running backs don't get that big of a life expectancy. So it could be all of those 3 things. So rest of the year outlook for Conner, you're right. I'm with you. It's like, it's unfortunate for you, Shovit, because you got Pacheco. Pacheco had a great week. Najee Harris finally comes back to life, and you're like, whoa, all of a sudden my running back room's looking great. But then what does it cost you? It's at the expense of Conner all of a sudden looking like Najee did like 5 weeks ago. So you're just like, dude, can I just get all my running backs being good for once? It's super unfortunate. It's super unfortunate. But I mean, it's the running back world. Like, it's never surprising when you have a running back go off, and then immediately the next week, they're like off the team. Or like a back. Right. Like Darrell Henderson had such productive weeks, and he got cut. He got cut from his team. There's nothing more you could do. It's just the world of the running back situation. So yes, you'll have to pivot quickly if you need to. Go ahead.
Well, what you can do, I mean, like this is what you have to do, right? If you have Jonathan Taylor and he got hurt and Zach Moss was out there on the bench, you got to go pick up. He has to be there on your bench. For same thing with Kyren Williams right now. Kyren Williams is really doing really good. But Royce Freeman's still available out there. So if you have a bench spot, you need to get your handcuffs, and there's certain handcuffs that will perform and certain handcuffs like DeMarcado that won't. But those are guys that I think you should go out and target.
Yeah, again, that's a really great point, and I wanted to talk about that kind of on a standalone. But yes, you're heading into the playoffs, right? In the playoffs, you're not going to be like, oh, do I start DeMarcado this week? No, like you need to have your best players playing all the time, probably in the playoffs. You're not leaving it up to chance. So what you're doing right now is 2 weeks out from the playoffs, you're figuring out what your roster is going to look like in 2 weeks. It's never too early to start planning, especially if you've already clinched the playoffs. You know what seed you're going to be. You know who you're facing. Like all of that stuff, you can already look. You can look ahead and figure that out. So if that's the case for you, you absolutely need to be building your roster with the Elijah Mitchells, with the guys of teams, of players that could get hurt. And then you know that the next guy is automatically valuable. Or the flip side, there's 18 weeks now, but there are some teams that have a chance to not play on week 17. Like their starters could just not play. the Philadelphia Eagles being one of the biggest ones. We'll talk about the Eagles game here in a second, but that Eagles team and the playoffs of fantasy football, there could be a big potential game this upcoming week that completely shifts that. So let's talk about that real quick. I want to dive into that game, but there's one more game. Let's talk about the Chiefs and Raiders. The Chiefs went into Las Vegas, beat the Raiders 31-17. They covered the 9.5-point spread, over 42.5 cashes. Rashee Rice, best game of the season, 8 for 107 and a touchdown, 10 targets. It's his first 100-yard game of the season. First game with double-digit targets. First game with more than 5 catches. He's the wide receiver 3 on the week. This offense struggled, but once Rice got unlocked, all of a sudden this offense started clicking. Rice owner, optimistic perspective. I want to believe that there's a correlation with, wow, you got somebody else involved, and all of a sudden the offense started clicking. Kelsey still got 91 yards, but that was all after they were like, wow, there's another player we could try to somewhat get the ball to and open up the offense a little bit more. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't like they threw a bomb to him. It was an in route and he just ran it all the way, and he still had a couple of drops. So it's not perfect. But what's important here is MVS used to see the field on like 70% of snaps, even if he was blocking, just running go routes, not being used, but just still on the field. Same with Sky Moore. Rashee Rice has overtaken both of those guys in terms of snap count on the football field. And so not only is he on the field more, when he's on the field right now, he's producing. So those things can correlate to one another because we've seen the numbers. So what that means is, for the first time personally, as a Rashee Rice owner, this is the first week where I'm like, man, is there something to grasp at here and something to be happy or optimistic about moving forward? Because the Chiefs offense, like, let's not paint a nice picture for them. They've been sucking, like they've been bad. And outside of Kelsey, no one produces, and Mahomes is having a subpar year because of that fact. So they are desperate to find another person to open up that offense with. I think Rashee Rice can be that guy. I think because they saw it happen now, they're more inclined to be like, let's give this guy more options. Let's give this guy more opportunities and see what he can do with it. So I think the future is bright for Rashee Rice. Bye weeks galore. I'm starting him this week because I have to, but I feel great going into the playoffs knowing that I'm rostering a player that is getting passes thrown to from Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs haven't locked up shit yet, right? So there's not a world right now where I see the Chiefs getting, benching their players or resting, anything like that. They're playing for a bye. They need the bye desperately. They want to play an Arrowhead. So I think they're going to be going all out, and I love Rashee Rice rest of the season. I feel great about it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like, this game was interesting because the Chiefs were down 14-0 against the Raiders. You're like, what the hell is going on right now? Are the Raiders really about to, because they pulled that upset last year. It's like, is this what's going to happen? And then, you think about the receivers, like every single receiver has had their opportunity. Like MVS had his chance last week, dude. He just dropped that catch, like straight up dropped it. And Sky Moore has had plenty of opportunities, right? So Rashee Rice, like at this point, like, he's the best option for that team. Like he like there's no
Tony's
handcuffs.
Hurt, like Tony's right. Like just random.
Right. So this is the guy that can step up. And so I think the sky is the limit for Rashee Rice and his outlook moving forward. Not maybe wide receiver 2 spot, but definitely flex worthy. Yeah. Definitely flex worthy. And the other side of things, not the other side, but the running back situation, I think Pacheco, I just want to highlight that, had a solid game. RB4, 23.4 points. I was ready to name my firstborn son Isaiah if he won me this week, but I couldn't because of Kyren Williams. But you know what? I'm like okay with that because my grandparents would not be able to say Isaiah to my kids. They can't. We're immigrants. They wouldn't be able to do that. So I'm glad that didn't happen. But Pacheco, great matchups coming up, right? You got matchups against Green Bay. You got matchups against Buffalo, New England, Las Vegas, and Cincinnati. I think that those all bode well for Pacheco. And I think that moving forward, heading to the playoffs, Pacheco is going to be, if you get to the playoffs, is going to be a great running back, RB1 for you.
Yeah, the catches were what was awesome this week because he wasn't getting catches the last couple of weeks. Just keep in mind, Jerick McKinnon was out, right? So Jerick McKinnon did not play this week. Jerick McKinnon is their third down guy. Jerick McKinnon is the guy that in the red zone, for whatever reason, they love to throw passes to and whatnot. And he was so clutch down the stretch last year and in the playoffs that I love Pacheco, but I also think that his ceiling is limited. Great game, 2 touchdowns though, right? 2 rushing touchdowns from the 1-yard line, I believe. So if not for that, maybe not the best day, but still, you would still take the production. Don't get me wrong. I just think that the reason I traded away Pacheco and the reason why it's frustrating with Pacheco is if they used him like a 3-down back, he'd be fantastic. And I think he can shoulder that load. But for some reason, they love McKinnon on third downs. They love his pass catching. They love his pass protecting. So they love everything about McKinnon on third downs. And if you're not, Pacheco runs the ball, 12 to 15 times a game. So your 100-yard games are pretty tough to attain at that number, right? So you're banking on the fact that he's rumbling into the end zone to get over 10 points. And I think that's where the struggle lies for me and Pacheco is I love the player. I think he would be very productive if they just used him like a 3-down workhorse. And I think he could handle it because he runs so hard and the dude's just awesome. But the fact that he's not consistently their pass catcher on third downs is where the limitation lies.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you gotta be just optimistic with the points that he got and with the matchups and things like that. So, I mean, I'm still riding with it. Obviously, you have to, but
for sure.
I'm just more excited that there's an RB1 in my team that can consistently give me points at least 10 points. 10 points. Come on, I can get 10 points from Pacheco.
Yeah, half-point PPR, you should easily get that.
Yeah.
The game of the week, shove it. The Bills at the Eagles. Bills in a must-win. Otherwise, they drop to 10th in the AFC in the playoff picture, and they lost. So they did drop to 10th in the AFC in the playoff picture. 37-34 final. What a shootout. Philly covers a 2.5-point spread. Over 48.5 cashes. Skinny Batman had a day.
Ooh, he did, man. Made a day for himself, scoring 23.6 points, 7 receptions, 106 yards, and finished with a touchdown. Man, I just don't see how the Eagles can be beaten, right? It's just the Eagles rolling like this, coming back from that game, amazing game. It's just too tough to beat. And they face the 49ers next week, going back to Devontae Smith. That's also probably going to be a big high-scoring game where Hurts is going to have to air it out. So I see another Devontae Smith kind of similar production. And A.J. Brown, it's not like he had a bad day either. He scored a touchdown as well. But I think that there's a world where both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown produce on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I think no Dallas Goedert is Devontae Smith full go. Like you need to full send that man when there's no Dallas Goedert. And yeah, he had lackluster weeks, don't get me wrong, but we kept losing sight of the fact that this man is immensely talented. He's a really, really good receiver. He would be a number one receiver on most teams. And the fact that AJ Brown's on his team is not a hindrance. It actually helps him because it takes away the best cornerback. It takes away the most physical cornerback. It takes away the biggest cornerback. And Devontae Smith's a smaller dude. So he wants AJ Brown to take away those cornerbacks so he can get the smaller guys. And I think he's going to roll with that. And I think you have to absolutely start him. He's really good. He's really, really good. But this game just did not disappoint on any level, right? Battle of the two best fantasy quarterbacks, just zero disappointments. Josh Allen, incredible. 39 fantasy points. Like Josh Allen has his faults. He turns the ball over for sure, but he turns the ball over, but also equates to the most points and touchdowns for any other team in the league, right? So he's scoring the most touchdowns, but he also turns the ball over. So you're in this kind of like, I don't know what to do with this information, but 39 fantasy points is what you do with that information, right? He's quarterback 1 on the week. He's quarterback 1 on the year. He's quarterback 1 on the year by like more than 2 games played worth of points versus the next guy. So he's dominating the quarterback position. QB2 on the year, the guy right behind him, Jalen Hurts, 34.5 fantasy points. QB2 on the year, QB2 on the week. Their season totals, positions absolutely lined up. Here's what's crazy. You go into the playoffs. Josh Allen, the Bills' playoff hopes are in jeopardy. Right now, they're 6-6 and they're 10th in the AFC. So they're fighting for their lives. There will be no benching of Josh Allen. There will be no let's, lollygag our way into the playoffs. These guys are fighting for their lives just to make the playoffs. Every game will be playing his heart out. I don't care the matchup. Josh Allen is probably going to be on a lot of winning fantasy football teams this season. Now, Jalen Hurts, better situation because he's got a better schedule, but here's the fear. The Eagles are 2 games up on the 49ers right now for the number 1 seed. And guess who they play this week, Shovit? They play the 49ers. So if the Eagles win this game,
oh God,
they almost have a 4-game lead on the number 1 seed because they have a 3-game lead plus the tiebreaker with the 49ers. You know what that means? Week 17, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, DeAndre Swift, Dallas Goedert, none of those guys may play. If they have the first seed clinched in week 16, they may play. I don't see a world where the starters get benched for 2 straight weeks because that's kind of just throwing off the rhythm. But It would not surprise me at all if they play a half. It would not surprise me at all if they don't play at all. It would not surprise me at all if they play all the games. But you have to think about the fact that if the Eagles beat the 49ers this week, they're up 3 games on the 49ers for the number 1 seed, and they hold the tiebreaker. So at that point, again, it's pretty much locked up for you. So you really have to think about, in the playoffs, is there a world where Hurts, Brown, Smith, those guys are benched in week 17? There certainly could be. So plan ahead and plan accordingly. Make sure you roster a quarterback in week 17 that you see has maybe a favorable matchup, because you kind of have to.
You know what's crazy about this is, well, first of all, the Eagles have been to the Super Bowl. Like, they're not, playoffs is not even like, that's that's a given.
Yeah, that's
like,
what I'm saying.
They want to get
bench
to the
their team right
land.
now and be like, we're fine for 6 weeks because we're going to make the playoffs.
Right. And what sucks about, also what's interesting about this is that Jalen Hurts did not play week 16 and 17 of last week because of injury. So if you're a guy that got Jalen Hurts in both last year and this year, and now you're seeing like the Eagles being too good, that sucks. That sucks. Yeah, definitely have a backup quarterback ready in that instance. It's just an unfortunate event. Your team is just too good.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure if you're a Hurts owner, if you own any Eagles players, you are hoping that the 49ers beat the Eagles this week, because that means that they are not clinching anything. That means they're going to have to keep playing, keep fighting for that number 1 seed. So that's like, I'm hoping the Eagles win, because I don't have Hurts, I don't have Smith, I don't have Brown, and I don't want to play against those guys in the playoffs. So my goal is the Eagles beat the 49ers this week. They lock up that number 1 seed basically. And at that point, Jalen Hurts, one of the best fantasy football quarterbacks, might be irrelevant in the championship game.
What's going to be interesting about all this is, what does Dallas Goedert do? If all those guys are out, does Dallas Goedert in?
No. I think what would happen is ultimately he'll be back before like they're benching them anyways. So I think by the time the benching begins, he'll be fully healthy, and I expect him to be benched along with everybody else.
He's also going to get benched. Okay, fair. We'll see.
But a great game there. Eagles win that game. Bills, jeopardy, man. 6-6, not even anywhere remotely in the playoff picture, which is just crazy. Sunday Night Football, the Ravens and the Chargers, 20-10 final. The Ravens win this game on the road, 3.5-point spread. They cover that, under 49.5 cashes. This was just a gross football game. I felt like the Ravens could have done so much more. They could have just blown this team out. The Ravens were kind of whatever. But the Chargers, the Ravens defense is great, so I wasn't expecting the Chargers to be that good. But let's talk about Austin Eckler, because he needs to be talked about. He's kind of a bust. If you factor in the injury, if you factor in the outputs. It's just not the usage you like, not the usage we're used to seeing. He doesn't even look completely healthy. He's got 4 weeks this year where he's been RB3, 4, 4, and 6, right? 4 weeks. So fantastic, top 6 running back. That's what you draft him for. But he's also got 4 weeks this year where he was running back 26, 32, 36, and 39. So not what you drafted him for, second or third, or maybe even first overall at all. So the correlation is, in the good games he's had, he's scored a touchdown. And in the bad games he's had, he hasn't scored a touchdown. Now, again, we came into the season and I had my reservations with Austin Eckler, because why did they not pay him? Why did they not agree to bring him back? And he knows he's a free agent at the end of this year. It's interesting how a team can use a player knowing that they can use him a lot because they can run him to the ground. They can use him not enough because they don't care, because he's not going to be on the team. So they want to see the players that will be on the team next year to see what they have. So it's a weird conundrum with Austin Eckler, where I talked to you about this show of it last week, where I was like, man, the number 1 team in my other league traded for CMC. Like, who could I trade for to match that trade to go into the playoffs and feel comfortable? And, I thought about Austin Eckler, but he's just quite not there this year, man. He's just not there this year. The only saving grace is they've got an amazing schedule coming up. He gets Vegas, he gets Buffalo, and he gets Denver, all amazing teams to run the football against. So good schedule there. But have we seen the best of Austin Eckler in the world of fantasy football and football as a whole?
Man, it's a tough, what are they, 5-7 or something,
it's
right?
Bad. Something like that.
It's the chances of them, you got to think Brandon Staley is on a hot seat right now.
He's gone. He's gone after this year for sure.
If they don't make the playoffs, he's got to be gone. I mean, honestly, even if they do make the playoffs and they lose,
this is
his
last
round,
year. Yeah,
he's got to be gone. But you thought that Keelan Moore would really turn this team around. Like what Keelan Moore did with the Dallas Cowboys, did with Tony Pollard. You thought that you would get that with Austin Eckler, and it's just not happening. Right, the only guy from the Chargers that you could feel very confident about is Keenan Allen. Right, Keenan Allen is getting the targets. Again, he's the only one that's doing anything. Gerald Everett did get a touchdown this game, the lone touchdown, but that the team just looks terrible. But the good thing is they have a really pretty decent matchup. And so you kind of have to, continue riding this train of shittiness till the end of the season, because you got Herbert probably in the 5th round. You got Eckler probably in the first round as well. So you got to keep going with it, but it's just it's a terrible situation. I want to talk about two things. First thing is Jalen Guyton comes back next week, and he's a guy that you can go out and pick up and could consider him starting on your team. He's better than Quentin Johnston. And he's
who isn't?
Sorry, Joshua Palmer.
Palmer. Okay.
Joshua Palmer is better than Guyton and better than Quentin Johnston, and he's a wide receiver 2 on that team. He's a flex worthy position. And another thing I want to talk about is very funny, and this is for Randy that was listening to our live. We were talking about Zay Flowers versus Devontae Smith. Who should we start? And me and you both were saying start Devontae Smith. Luckily, he started Zay Flowers, but luckily for him, Zay Flowers got that last minute rushing touchdown, which honestly he should have probably went down for.
Yeah,
he finished with 23.2 points, but I think that was a very lucky thing to happen if you're a Zay Flowers owner, right? Like, no way that you're gonna actually expect that touchdown end of the game when you can just run out the clock. So I think that Devontae Smith versus Zay Flowers, I think it should have still been Zay Flowers, but Devontae Smith. But it was very interesting that he got that last minute lucky ass touchdown where he should have been down. So shout out to you, Randy. You probably lucked out. Or you got lucky, but next time just go with Devontae Smith, bro.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is even after that, like Devontae had 20 points, 20.1 and half point PPR, and Zay had 20.7 and half PPR, right? So Zay did slightly outperform him, but I think we all understand that the process it's the process over results, right? And the process in which Devontae Smith gets used in that offense, downfield targets, stuff like that, it's miles better than the way that they use Zay Flowers freaking screens behind the backfield for like 5 of his 7 targets. Like, you hate to see that. So I would love a world where Zay Flowers is getting used more downfield. They're end arounding with him and all that stuff, because that means more Zay Flowers usage and he's a good football player. But right now, I think on a week-to-week basis, you're very rarely having that debate. Like, and what's crazy is we had that debate, and in the end, I don't think Randy won his matchup by 0.6 points, right? So it was a moot point. It didn't matter who he started. But again, I still go back to process over results. This doesn't mean you're like, oh man, next week, do I start Zay over Smith? No, Devontae Smith is the better player. He's the better fantasy football player. He's the more consistent fantasy football player. His team uses him more. His team needs him more. So like all of the things point to Devontae Smith being used over Zay Flowers. But congrats, Randy, on that 37-yard touchdown run at the end. Monday Night Football. God, that was a disgusting game. I can't imagine if you weren't a fan of one of the two teams. How the hell were you staying up and watching this miserable football game? The Bears and the Vikings in Minnesota, 12-10 final. The Bears score 0 touchdowns and win the football game. The Vikings covered 3.5-point dog spread. Is that right? What the hell? Under 43.5 cashes. I mean, I'll keep it quick. The Dobbs magic has run out. I'm sorry, Joshua Dobbs. Great story, pastronaut, all this stuff. Do I think he can still be serviceable? Do I think this is maybe the worst of Josh Dobbs? Certainly. But do I think there's a world where Josh Dobbs can be a serviceable NFL starting quarterback over a full season? No, I don't think that. I think the reason is because he's way too loose with the football. Like the turnovers, you just can't turn the football over that many times. I don't care if you manage the game. Right? Managing the game and not turning the football over is way better than turning the football over the way you're doing it. So despite 4 turnovers, almost 5 turnovers, our defense still gave us a chance to win the football game, and it didn't matter. So people were starting Josh Dobbs because he had a rushing floor. Not a great game at all. We don't even know if he's starting after the bye. The one saving grace is Justin Jefferson will be back 100% after the bye, so you can deploy him, which maybe helps Joshua Dobbs, but maybe it's not even Joshua Dobbs starting. Maybe it's Jaron Hall. Maybe it's Nick Mullins. So I think you're staying away from the Vikings quarterbacks unless it's maybe Josh Dobbs and it's a favorable matchup. But Justin Jefferson's back in week 14. They have a bye week this week. JJ, Addison, Hawkinson, you should be able to deploy those guys. And hopefully we see some good production from Justin Jefferson, those of us that have been stashing him in IR and waiting for him to come back.
Yeah, man, that Dobbs, man, it's just tough to watch the interceptions. But there was that one throw to Addison. If he connects that throw and Addison doesn't step out of bounds, that's a walk-in touchdown, right? So
there were so many just like kind of there, like even that throw, right? Wide open, broken play, cornerback falls down. If Dobbs keeps that in bounds, touchdown, easy. You're walking in. But also, like, if you're Jordan Addison, how are you not aware of where you're catching the football there? That was pretty bad. Like
That was pretty bad.
that looked as lackadaisical as a catch. Like the guy looked like he was fair catching a punt is what it
He
looked
did.
like. And I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like you're right there. You couldn't tippy toe your way in there. So he didn't help his quarterback at all. He had a good game. Like there were some balls where he was fighting, to catch. So still had a good game, whatever, Jordan Addison. But that is one of those where you're just like, man, a quarterback that couldn't keep the ball in bounds when you have like 70 yards of open space, and then a receiver who couldn't quite understand where he was to just get his feet in. So both guys out of sync. It felt like much of the week or much of the game, Dobbs was completely out of sync with his receivers. So just didn't end up being a good fantasy day for, anybody.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy that the Chicago was favored. I mean, it was a home game in Minnesota, so that's wild.
That might be. I think that's wrong. I think the Vikings were favored for sure. I might have wrote that wrong. I think Chicago's 3.5-point dogs.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's talk about Chicago for a little bit, right? So Chicago, you got players, you got more, you got Fields that we need to talk about, got Roschon Johnson. But it's tough to make anything of the Chicago offense, right? Roschon Johnson finishes with 10 points, but outside of DJ Moore, it's hard to trust anyone's, and I want to include Fields in that as well. The good thing about it is you don't have to worry about that next week. They're headed to a bye week, and then it's the Lions, where Fields is startable. So I think that against the Lions, you do have to start him where there is a negative game script and Fields just somehow finds ways to get points and things like that. But if you're Roschon Johnson holder, you probably can't start him. DJ Moore, obviously you do. Cole Kmet, I don't think you can even start him either. So it's tough to make anything of the Chicago offense of all these other players outside of Fields and DJ Moore.
Yeah, Kmet's usage was nice. I think he had 7 targets, 7 catches, but it felt like a lot of that was early in the game. So what looked like it could be a pretty big Kmet game, even, if the yards aren't there, but you're still taking 7 targets to your tight end, you take that. So I think Fields does certainly help the fantasy outlook, but the running backs are tough because Herbert's back, but Johnson outsnapped him. We talked about this all season. Johnson's the future of the running back core here. So at some point he's going to be the guy because they need to see what they have heading into next season. And Foreman was inactive and Johnson and Herbert were both back, and it was more of Johnson's backfield than it was Herbert. So if you're picking up a guy, Johnson's probably still a free agent. So if you're needing to pick somebody up, Roschon Johnson's not terrible, but you don't feel great about starting him because in any given week, Herbert could also equally see 50% of the snaps there.
Right. And you don't pick him up this week. You pick him up next week.
No, bye week. Right. Yep, bye week. So bye weeks galore. You're just trying to fill in spots. But that is it, dude. That was the rundown. Long-winded when you don't get any bye weeks in one week and then you get 6 the next week. I don't know what the hell the NFL thinks sometimes. But speaking of bye weeks, next week show, but again, like I want to hammer this home. The Ravens have a bye. Lamar Jackson, Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, Keaton Mitchell, OBJ, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, you name it. Bills, Josh Allen, Dalvin Cook, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, Tyler Bass, Bills defense. That's a lot of startable players. Raiders, Adams, Jacobs, right? Bears, Fields, Kmet. We just talked about it. DJ Moore, Vikings, the receivers, Justin Jefferson, going to have to wait an extra week. And then the Giants with Saquon Barkley. So 6 teams are on a bye. This is a travesty. This is the last week with all these byes, but this is 2 weeks before playoffs start. So I don't love the scheduling by the NFL, just plain stupidity, if you ask me, but make sure you prepare for this. Again, we talked about it. I don't like to give the excuse to not be able to field the full roster, but if you drafted this year and you had Lamar Jackson, James Cook, Devontae Adams, your team could be completely decimated with bye weeks and you can't afford to drop any of them. So again, this is why you have to plan ahead. If we're telling you now, it's already too late because the bye weeks are here. So you should have already planned out your rosters ahead of time. But that was a wild week 12. I'm so sorry if you're one of the teams that are getting decimated with injuries. It makes fantasy football season so unfortunate. You can grind your way, but sometimes when you look at your lineup and you're starting, Jaden Reed and Demario Douglas and those guys, it's great. You're still playing and, you belong and you're in the game, but do you really have a great shot? Let's be real. No. So I feel for those folks for sure.
I feel attacked because I definitely have Douglas and Reed, but they have been doing really good. They've been doing really good. And unfortunately, Douglas is out. Hopefully Reed can do something. It's tough. Yeah. Good luck to everyone in the fantasy playoffs, and if you're in the situation.
Yeah, 2 weeks left, man. If you need to clinch the playoffs, let us know. How can we help? What advice do you need from us to make that happen? If you're in the playoffs, let us know. How can we help you win that championship trophy? That's what we're all about. I am Sweetcard. That's Shove It. We're the only playbook. Happy belated Thanksgiving. Hope you guys have a fantastic week. Let's watch some football this weekend. See you guys later.